What's good? Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about why people consume. So, I've been reading this book called Skin in the Game by Nassim Taleb, and he dedicates one chapter to exploring ancient wisdom. And a parable that he wrote about in the book, I really resonated with. And it's the parable of the fisherman and businessman. Long story short, the businessman is about maximizing material wealth, right? He's always spending time making money and scaling his business, going for IPOs, going public, making as much money as possible, with the end goal of retiring a filthy rich man, right? That's the businessman. The fisherman, on the other hand, spends the majority of his time tending to his intimate relationships. So this would be your family members, friends, and your kids, especially if your kids very young, right? They need to be socialized. So he spends time socializing his kids. And that's where you see a pretty big contrast between the two. And what this parable to me does is that it presents two different measures of wealth. From the perspective of the businessman, he measures wealth by material riches. He measures wealth by having really nice houses, probably. Houses, cars, trips, and he's bound to maximize his profits. And he spends most of his time doing that. For the fisherman, he measures wealth by time spent with people he loves. He loves family, friends, children, and is not necessarily bound to obligations coming from a job or obligations that is conducive to him making more money. Yeah. So two measures of wealth. And on top of that, it also talks about contentment. When is enough enough? For the businessman, he will eventually meet others who are also pursuing the goal of profit maximization, spending most of their time making money, and that temptation to keeping up with them will eventually arise. And I think it'll be pretty difficult to really pull the cord and tell everyone that here, hey, I'm going to stop right now. Yeah. But for the fisherman, if he measures wealth through relationships, then I think the number wouldn't have to be so high. But again, that's just my interpretation. So this also brings forth the question of why do we desire more? And what exactly explains the whys behind our desires? Yeah. So did some thinking and came up with three factors that influences what we desire and how we consume. So the first thing would be mimesis, well, precisely mimetic desire. Mimetic desire is this idea that Rene Girard came up with, and it's talking about how we are miming the desire of other people. And we're imitating the desires of other people because we fundamentally do not know what we want. So we take someone else's desire or the desire of society at large and use that as a proxy for our own desires. Yeah. So again, this would be very difficult for you to pull the cord on because there's just so many people out there in society and there's so many different types of games that you can play in. And by games in this instance, I mean, it could be the game of luxury cars. It could be the game of who's got the biggest house. It also could be clothes. Who's the most fashionable? Who has the most most trendy sneakers and clothes out there? So that's mimetic desire, and that's the first factor. Another factor would be constructed preferences, and I read about this in Nassim Taleb's book, where he describes constructed preferences as, this is just me paraphrasing, consumption preferences projected by brands and businesses that somehow signals our belonging with those of higher status or high status in general. So it could be luxury brands signaling how their product is what all ultra rich folks desire. And to buy into our product, you'll buy a ticket into this greater circle of ultra rich individuals, when in fact it really does not. It's a preference that's constructed by marketing and advertising. He also compares constructed preferences to poison being served in a golden cup. And to explain this, this would be, as you progress in terms of material wealth, you will be tempted to upgrade your lifestyle. But you don't really get a lot of satisfaction from this upgrade of your lifestyle because it only brings you fleeting happiness. And it just continues on, and it's toxic in that sense. So that's constructive preferences. The third one is something I'm super interested in, and it's status. So we are social animals, human beings. We have a need to belong, and we have a greater need to determine where we are at in the social hierarchy or just any hierarchy that you can think of. And with every game there comes a hierarchy. For coding, you have the best coders at the top and all the others underneath. For the NBA, it's the same thing, different tiers of players and how much they make. For sneakers, it's also different tiers of sneakers of different prices. And what people are doing with status is that you want to attain a higher position to enjoy the benefits that this higher position brings about. It could be that people treat you better, you have more mating options, and these would be three factors that could explain why desire is the way it is and why we consume. I also have this other way. I also have this other model that I came up with during my college years that explains the cycle of consumption. And the backstory behind this is that I went to Houston during a spring break years ago when everyone else was in Cancun, lubing up their condom. I was sitting alone on a bench doing some self-reflection and lubing up my pen to jot down some notes on a notebook. And this model is the creation of me lubing up that pen. So the first step within the model is the trigger, where it takes into account the three factors I talked about and poses it as problems that need to be solved. And to solve such a problem, you convert. And by convert, I mean buying a service or product. This can come in the form of you using up your credit. It could be monthly installments, and it could be you using your month's salary on a pencil. After you buy this $400 pencil, this conversion builds excitement. And excitement comes in the form of you tending to this newly acquired item with extra care. It's your baby, essentially. You're wearing it every single day. That pen you bought for $400, you're putting it here, put it in your front pocket, and you're walking around like this so everyone can know that you are a man of status who can afford a $400 pen. And after a while, give it a week or even less than a week, the glamour of the newly acquired item vanishes, and you don't treat it like it's your baby anymore. This is where you return to baseline and wait until the next trigger comes along so that the entire cycle can repeat itself again. So the flow of the cycle would be, you first have a trigger. This trigger causes you to consume. Consumption brings about excitement. Excitement fleets, and you return back to baseline. A lot of people live the majority of their lives without knowing that there's such a pattern of consumption. You keep buying and buying and buying to solve a problem that can't really be solved by pursuing materialistic goods or different types of services. The only solution here is for you to have a lot of self-awareness, to have a deep understanding of what you want, and to spend some time alone with yourself. Write alone, do stuff alone, and observe how your emotion fluctuates as you're doing different things alone without the influence of other people. And better yet, to find out what gets you in the flow, what you're really, really passionate about. Through doing so, you'll be able to understand what you truly desire. And after knowing this, that would kind of justify the things that you buy and consume. Yeah. Let